Well, welcome everyone. Afternoon and welcome to the Advancement Workshop series. This is our very first one in the series. I'm excited to be here with you. My name is Christy Mora. I am on the team here at Jennings, and I am honored to be with our Total Advancement Solutions team today, just a few of our team members. In today's discussion, Jennifer Perrow, Kim Jennings, and Jeff Hensley will be leading us through why a development plan is essential for making your fundraising goals a reality and the practical next steps you can begin taking. So it's going to be a great session. And before we get started, I just want to go ahead and take care of a little bit of housekeeping. So this workshop is being recorded, and we will be sharing a copy with you after the workshop. You'll likely be getting an email tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that and feel free to rewatch and share with your team members. After we wrap up our presentation today, we're going to move into a Q&A session. So at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A feature. You'll be using that to drop your questions, and you don't have to wait till the end. Go ahead and drop your questions as you think of them throughout the presentation, and we'll get to those after the presentation. And we have a chat bar. So go ahead, use the chat bar to just say hi, let us know where you're tuning in from and what team you're a part of. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer. I look forward to seeing this, guys.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited to be with you today. I'm Jennifer, and I am a senior generosity strategist with Jennings Partners. I live in Seattle, Washington, where it's still only 10:05 in the morning. And I work with schools and ministries and churches around the country to help them raise money for their visions. I know today we have people representing all of those groups on this call, so we're excited about the broad variety of people that are joining us today. And I'd like my colleagues to introduce themselves. So Jeff.
Hello, good day. Jeff Hensley, a senior generosity strategist with Jennings, Total Advancement Solutions. I'm based in the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Pleasure to be here and talk about development plans.
Kim.
Hi, folks. I'm Kim Jennings, and like my colleagues, I'm a certified fundraising executive, and I am based in the Atlanta area. I specialize with K-12 schools and nonprofits, and I'm really delighted to be with you all today.
All right, thanks, colleagues. Today we are going to talk about a development plan. What is it and why do you need one? We have defined a development plan as a detailed roadmap with both strategies and tactics that you can use to help your staff, your board, and your volunteers raise more money for your organization. In our observation, a lot of organizations we work with don't have a development plan. And those that do have development plans tend to raise more money than those that don't. So we want to help you get there. Christy, could you go ahead and open the poll for us? We have a quick poll we'd like you to take. We just want to know who has a development plan here. If you have one, if you don't have one, maybe you have an old one that you inherited and you're trying to figure out how to update it. So take a second and answer that poll. And then, as Christy said, you can also drop questions in the Q&A. By the way, one thing that we talked about when we were planning this is that there is definitely more than one way to do a development plan. There isn't one right format. We're going to talk to you today about things that we think are most important if you had to pick a few, but there's more than one way to do this. So, all right, let's see the poll. Okay. All right, so about a third of you have a plan that's current. About a little less than a third of you have a plan that's old. And then a good chunk of folks don't have one at all, or know what it is, or know that they need to build one. So that's good. We're kind of split across the board. Thanks, Christy. You can take that down. All right, the first thing we are going to talk about today is assessment. That's the first thing you should do before you develop a plan, and I'm going to toss it over to Jeff to talk about assessment.
Thank you, Jennifer. Crucial to development plans is starting where you start from, establishing that baseline of your fundraising performance. And so that's where we recommend starting any development plan. First, look at your mission and vision. Is it clear? Is it current? Is it endorsed by your staff and board? Is there consensus around it? So start at the very high level and then work down. Is there clarity, for example, in your staffing and your board roles and responsibilities with respect to fundraising? Does everyone know what they need to be doing, or is there a need for greater specificity and clarity around roles and responsibilities? Thirdly, and this is probably the most important part of this assessment work, look at your data. We recommend reviewing the past 3 years of your donor data and really follow these following issues. Retention. How many donors did you retain this year that gave to you last year? What is your retention rate? So many organizations don't know that percentage. You should, because if you don't know what your performance is around retention, then you're not going to be able to really address it and set goals for improving it. Secondly, which of your donors would you like to upgrade this year to increase their giving year over year? Which donors, thirdly, have downgraded their giving to you? Knowing who those are going to be very important as you develop strategy around bringing them back into performing at the level they have in the past years. And then finally, who are your recurring givers? Who are those that are giving to you multiple times a year? Is there an opportunity for you to bring them over into a monthly recurring giving program if they've given to you 3 or more times in any one given year? So having that real good sense of what your data is telling you is going to then help you set your goals, which is the next stage in the development process. Where do you want to be? And oftentimes we think about goals purely in monetary amounts, and having a monetary goal is extremely important, but it's not the only area that we can set goals for our development work. It's also going to need to be based on that assessment work, your past performance. To set a goal that's unreasonable, that is exponentially greater than what you've ever done in the past, isn't going to be helpful to the morale of your staff, to demonstrating your value to the organization. So reasonable goal setting is crucial. And then goals also have to be aligned with budgets. What kind of money do you need to raise in order to make your operating budget and to fulfill your mission as an organization? These goals should address areas of weakness for you. So if you raised less last year than you did before, how are you going to turn that ship around and raise more this year? Looking at that total dollar amount. And we encourage you to break it down on the various areas of fundraising performance. Major givers, annual givers. What's your goal for corporate and foundation funding if that's a particular area of work that you focus on? If you have a planned giving program, what's your goal there? And again, it could be both monetary as well as performance. Maybe your goal is to get 5 new planned gift commitments this year. What is your goal around volunteer engagement? How many individuals do you want to have engaged in your organization moving forward? We often say that goals are hopes for, right? But having a goal in and of itself isn't a strategy, and that's why we need to turn then, after we assess and make goals, to actually outlining the plan.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So you've assessed your past performance, you've set your goals, your fundraising goals. What are the strategies that you need to enact to actually help you hit those goals? We have identified 5 that we think are really important, and we've actually broken those down into the 3 that we think you should focus on the most. Annual giving, major gifts, and volunteer engagement are the big 3. We're going to talk about all 5 of these today, so stay tuned. But if you've never done a plan, at the very least, we recommend you start with those 3. And then when you're ready, you should also layer in a strategy around corporations and foundations and a strategy around planned giving. And we're going to talk about all of those. But I'm going to toss it over to Kim, who's going to start us off by talking about annual giving.
Sorry, I had to figure out how to unmute myself. So annual giving is indeed very an essential piece of making your development plan. It is a foundational level because you're reaching folks and you're hoping to influence their behavior. So we're very intentional about calling it annual giving as opposed to annual fund, because we're hoping to increase the behavior of folks who continue to give, ideally unrestricted giving to help your operating funds. So some of the things that we really think are important regarding annual giving and coming up with your plan is that the name. And so, it's important that it's mission driven, so that the giving to this area is mission driven. Sorry, I'm at home and the dog's barking. So it's mission driven, and it's about giving for impact to make your mission possible. So calling it annual fund is really more of about an annual thing. It's every year, and fund is just sort of a bucket of money. But if you're able to bring clarity to the purpose of what they're raising or what you're raising money for, the name is an easy way to begin that. Also, you want to keep in mind the words and phrases that you use when you're talking about people giving to your organization each year. So focus your message on the impact. So rather than talking about general gap funding or operating funds, or trying to talk about just keeping the doors open, you wouldn't say that, but that sort of concept is less impactful and less compelling than talking about the impact of the money that they're giving on your the people who you serve and their families. So audience is another aspect that's really important. So you want to consider what you're saying to the various segments and what's going to resonate best with each one of those. So for example, one of the questions we received in the earlier when you were registering was regarding parent giving in schools, and this is an element that we can talk about in our September webinar specifically. But you want to talk with your various segments about the way that their giving matters to them and how it's going to help impact your constituents. Timing, you want to use a calendar to map it out. So don't ask back to back, and don't ask when tuition's due, for example, for a school, and don't ask right. If you just asked last month, you need to really have a cadence of communicating the impact and what's happening in your organization more often than asking them to give. One of the really important reasons why annual giving is foundational is that it really builds that muscle of generosity and leads to major givers. So I'm going to pass it on to Jeff to talk about that.
And I believe Kim's dog is exciting my dog now. So we might have a chorus of dogs across the country participating in this webinar, but that's okay. Major giving is going to be a fundamental component of any development plan, and you ignore your major givers at your own peril as an organization. One of the trends we're seeing in giving across the country is that while giving is at an all-time high, Americans are extraordinarily generous in their giving, fewer people are giving. So that means that fewer people are giving more, and that means major gifts are really important to sustain your organization year over year. The first suggestion we give is really just defining what a major gift is to your organization. What is a meaningful gift that's significant to your organization? One rule of thumb that I sometimes give our clients is look at your entire history of giving from smallest gift to largest gift and see what the top 10% of the givers are giving, and maybe make that as your benchmark for what a major gift is. But that will vary from size of your organization, from the size of your donor base, but come up with a plan for defining that so that you can then pay attention to it. And then determine who those givers are, develop portfolios, look at how you might cultivate them. What is your plan for each of them over the course of the coming year? Well, screening helps that process. If you've never done it, we would recommend doing it, looking at what publicly available data there is to determine the giving capacity of an individual that might be in your donor base. Again, capacity doesn't equal inclination. So just because someone has wealth doesn't necessarily mean that they will give you that wealth as a donor. But at least you have that level of intelligence going into relating to and working with your major donors, in that you know the basic parameters of their ability to give. And then have a plan to meaningfully and intentionally engage your best supporters. That's so important. We talk about having plans around annual giving, and Kim did a great job of outlining exactly what that might mean. We'll talk in a few minutes about a communications plan to those individuals. But sometimes we neglect the very best donors that we have. We don't have a plan for them. And really, it's a plan to increase their generosity year over year, to find opportunities to encourage their joy of giving to your organization, and to deepen that relationship and partnership with them, as together you do great things for your organization. So we really encourage you to have intentionality in this space, to know what a major gift is, who your major givers are, what wealth screening you might be able to do to understand their capacity better, and then having a plan to meaningfully engage them with intention and purpose.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to go ahead and answer Allison's question, by the way, because it's relevant. Allison asked about who we recommend for wealth screening. We actually work with an organization called Donor Search that does a beautiful job. And because we have an agreement with Donor Search, we can offer that service at a great discount to our clients. So if you work with any of us, that's a service that we can offer to you. It's not hard to do, and we can offer it at a rate that's probably well below what you get if you pursued it on your own. So we'd be happy to talk about that with you at a later date. So, all right, let's talk about volunteers for a minute. I want to start by talking about board members, because board members are very often probably your most significant volunteers. Your board needs to understand the mission and vision of the organization. They need to be able to tell people what it is, and they need to be in alignment with it. Ask your board members if they know what your mission and vision are. It might surprise you. Board members also need to understand their role as fundraisers. Board members should be givers, getters, and connectors. And we like to see 100% engagement from boards. It's such a powerful thing, as you all know, for an executive director or a head of school or a lead pastor to be able to say 100% of our board supports this organization. It really bolsters your ability to ask for funds. We do understand that not all board members have wealth. Some of them are on your board for other reasons. That's fine. We like to talk about equal sacrifice, not equal giving. And by the way, we do this type of work with boards as well. I actually have a presentation I do with boards called How to Be a Great Fundraising Board, where we really push your board to kind of step up in this way. So boards, and then I'm going to toss it to Kim, and she's going to talk about kind of the important role that volunteers and potentially a development committee can play.
So sometimes it's really challenging to decide how to work with volunteers because wrangling them, frankly, it takes time and it takes effort. But it is, we believe, really important to engage volunteers because there's a stronger chance for broad participation across your community if there's more people who have quote unquote skin in the game. And there's a stronger chance for success overall. Because they're going to encourage others to give because they themselves are involved in the philosophy and strategy of why people should give, and they themselves are giving. So we really feel that this is an important element to include. It's really great, a great group of people to help you determine strategy, to give you feedback. If you train them and work with them, they can be ambassadors for you out in your community. They can help you to strategize, plan, and execute events, and they can do so much more. But one thing that we really also want to mention in overall volunteer engagement, board, and anyone else that you're working with, it's really important that they have an understanding and there's a clarity of the purpose of why they're working with you. What are they doing? What are their expectations? You want to be really clear. Even a written job description is really helpful, and we recommend that. So the clarity of purpose and expectation, and you do need to give them constant communication, a really good set of training You want to work with them for them to understand what the updates are. So don't just give them a bunch of information and send them off on their merry way. You want to nurture them and really protect them as ambassadors and help make sure that they feel strong and ready out in the community. One of the other aspects that we wanted to talk about today is corporate and foundation. So of the 3 areas that we've considered essential: annual giving, major gifts, and volunteer engagement. If regarding corporate foundation and planned giving, if you have bandwidth and resources, those are really, really good areas to branch out into. And I'm going to turn it back to Jennifer to talk with you about corporate and foundation.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, so those first 3 are critical, right? Annual gifts, major gifts, volunteer engagement. This is kind of a next level strategy that can pay off. I personally have kind of a love-hate relationship with corporations and foundations because it's a lot of work to apply for gifts. It's a lot of waiting, but there is potential for huge payoff if they choose to support your organization. So it's a bit of a long game. You need to treat corporations and foundations as though they are major givers. You need to build relationships with them and pay attention to the people who are the decision makers at these organizations. And I want to point out here, sometimes clients will ask about donor advised funds or donor advised foundations. That's a little bit different. If individual givers have set up kind of a personal foundation or a donor advised fund, that sort of falls in the major gifts category. You don't have to fill out a long application. We're talking here about corporate sponsors and foundations where you would need to apply for a grant. Really important to find organizations that have a history of giving to organizations like yours. Just as Jeff said about major givers, just because somebody has the money doesn't mean they're going to give it to your organization. So find organizations that have a history of giving to places like yours. We have some software that can help us help you find organizations that might be a good fit for you. And then if you have a connection at all, if you know somebody on the board of that organization or can get a personal introduction, that can be helpful. We like to quote Mark Dillon here. Mark is the executive vice president of our division here at Jennings, and he says when it comes to corporations and foundations, you want to get in line, stay in line, and move to the front of the line. So get in line, identify foundations and corporations that are a good match and work to get a relationship and work on your application. Stay in line by providing good reporting and maintaining the relationship well, and then get to the front of the line. Deepen the relationship over time and see if you can deepen the amount of resources that they're willing to give to your organization. All right, Jeff, talk to us about planned giving.
Yes, thank you. It's that 5th strategy we're recommending. And again, it's like the corporate and foundation funding strategy. It's a long game approach. Planned gifts, testamentary commitments, estate plans, those take a long bit of investment and deep work with donors to get to the point to being able to commit funds when they pass that would go to your organization. So how can you establish a relationship of such depth and quality that someone would give you a testamentary commitment as an organization? The good news is your best prospects you already know. They're the people in your database. They're your most faithful supporters. And we really recommend 2 criteria to identify individuals within your donor base that are good prospects for planned giving. One is basically age. Maybe 65 or over, anyone who is in that age of life, that season of life where they're thinking about their legacy, they're thinking about the care of their family and what they want to do with the resources that they have when they pass. Also, an individual who has given to your organization for 5 or more years in a row. Those individuals have already committed substantial investment of their time. Perhaps they were volunteers, of their resources, donors. They've already said to you, look, we believe your organization's important enough to dedicate the last half decade of our giving and of our time to your organization. They are going to be excellent candidates for people who would think, what do I want to do to follow up that in-life investment? how can I make a legacy gift that would shore up this organization even after I'm gone? So we recommend looking in your own database for those prospects, and then engage them in a way that makes sense for your organization. If you're a larger organization with a multi-person staff, then you can roll out a more sophisticated planned giving program. Maybe you'd want to get into charitable gift annuities and charitable lead trusts and charitable remainder trusts. There's some sophisticated tools that you can use in planned giving. But even if you're a one-person shop where you don't have that kind of bandwidth to get into the details of planned giving, you can do something very basic, and that's provide your donors with easy language to help people understand how they can give and what their options are in giving through their estate plan. 85% of all planned gifts are simple bequests. That means someone just put a codicil in their will or some language in their will that said, we leave X% of our estate, residual estate, to XYZ nonprofit. That's as simple as it can be. And most of the planned gifts that are given on an annual basis come through that mode of giving. So don't be intimidated by planned giving, even if you're a one-person shop. You can engage it, and the payoffs for this work are amazing. One way to identify good prospects could be to send a mailer out that raises awareness that your organization is actively accepting planned gift commitments. Maybe there are donors that you have that have not identified themselves to you as having put your organization in their wills. So a survey might be very helpful. We do this often with our clients. We'll send out a survey to that demographic, those folks say 60 to 65 and over who have given 5+ years to the organization. We ask them questions like, why are you engaged with our organization? What passions do you have that really are expressed through our organization? And then toward the end of the survey, we say, have you ever thought about, or have you left our organization in your estate plan? And sometimes we have people say, yes, I have. I just never have told you. And then some people say, yes, I am, but I'm not going to tell you the details. And that's fine. People have different opinions on how transparent they want to be with organizations. I've worked with some donors where the donor actually gives a copy of their will to the nonprofit for safekeeping. So it varies from donor to donor, but this is a way through a survey that you can identify some people who've made testamentary commitments already to you. And you can plant the seed in others' minds of, oh, this is a possibility. I'd like to talk to someone at your organization about making that kind of commitment. Now, remember, I said that 85% of all planned gifts are simple bequests. And as we know, simple bequests are revocable. And that means that donors can change their mind up to the point of death, and if they remain competent as legal guardians of their own estate. So you have to have care and steward these legacy givers as well. It's important for you to acknowledge them on an annual basis. Maybe you have a dinner or event that celebrates their commitment. And studies suggest that those people who make a planned gift commitment will give 3 times more in their lifetime to your annual giving initiatives. So the stewardship not only protects the commitment to remain to your organization, but it also increases their annual giving over time.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, let me do a quick recap of the 5 important strategies. And then for those of you who are wondering, what about events and communications? We're going to get there next. The 5 strategies that you want to build into your development plan. You want to have strategies for annual giving, major gifts, volunteer engagement, including your board, and then add in, when you're ready, corporate and foundation strategies and planned giving strategies. So you might be wondering, and we had a number of questions about this even before the webinar launched, what about communications and what about events? Well, here's how we think about those. You need to have communications and events for each of the 5 areas that we just talked about. Let that sink in for a second. You need communication plans and events for each area that we just talked about, okay? And communications, you need a plan for the year. Let me give you some examples. Jeff gave an example of perhaps doing a survey to help solicit some new gifts in your planned giving area. So figure out where in your calendar that's going to go. Figure out where your appeals are going to go and who are they going to go to. As Kim said, we're going to talk differently to parents than we are to alumni. So when are you going to do an appeal for parents? What's it going to say? What month is it going to drop? Who's going to provide the content? We want to be really granular in our communication strategies for each of these 5 areas. And remember, it's not just about asking for money. It's also about telling stories of impact and saying thank you. Use all your channels. Things that come in the mail are important. Email's important. Videos are important. What your website says is important. Make sure you're communicating in a variety of ways, not just stuck in one channel. Same is true for events, okay? So you want to have events that support each strategy. One thing that we see a lot of is people who, especially at schools, basically their fundraising strategies involve either a golf tournament or a gala, and that's it. That's one event, and you need to know what your goal is for that, not just monetarily, but who are you trying to reach? What's the purpose of it? You probably need some other events. Golf tournaments and galas aren't going to be enough. Those are just part of a larger development plan that includes all the other areas we just talked about. Here are a couple other examples of good events. So for major givers, we really love to see people do small in-home events. Can be really impactful for a board member to invite some of their friends to come, and then the organization talks about mission and vision, and the major giver, the board member, invites people to participate, and then the development team can follow up with those folks after the event. We're also a fan of volunteer appreciation events or parent appreciation events because it's a great way to thank your volunteers. You want to engage those folks in a different way. Your gala might be a place that you're using to attract new people, new families who've never given to the school before, or newcomers to your organization. So make sure that you've got communications and events layered in to each of those 5 strategies. Okay.
And Jennifer, I'm just going to pop in real quick just to add to that is that don't necessarily think that your communications and your events all have to be big, fancy, expensive things. The communications could be just simple, emails with a quote or a short video that you do on your phone, just to show impact to your community about what's going on at your organization. So just want to make sure that that you guys are feeling good about the fact that there are definitely places for really, more layered events or layered communication strategies and fancy slick videos and all of that, which are fantastic. And if you have bandwidth and budget, those are fantastic. But also it's really important, the small touches throughout the year. So we really encourage you to think about all aspects of that. So thanks, Jennifer.
That's such a good ad, Kim. And Kim kind of said this, and I'll flesh it out a little bit further. But for example, when I was working on we were in a capital campaign for a church, for a new building for their university ministries. And I would periodically walk outside and just take a picture from my phone of the construction site and then send it with a text individually to a few of our top givers and say, I thought you'd like to see this today. Look, the roof is going on. Thanks for your generosity. They feel special. They love it that they got a sneak peek that nobody else got. And it took 2 minutes of my time to go do that. So what Kim said is really important. Be creative in that communication. Okay, what we want to do next is move on to questions. And we have the Q&A section down there at the bottom. Kim's going to moderate that for us. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes maybe to pop questions in there, but I know, Kim, you've got a list of questions to start with as well. So
I do. Thank you for those who sent questions in ahead of time. I'll give you all a few minutes to populate any of the questions. Why don't we, I'm just going to go ahead and start. So Jonathan Lyons asks, in a mid-size to large shop, how do you ensure communication and event alignment across strategies? That's a really good question because it can be complicated. Jeff, well, I'm going to toss that one to you since you've, go ahead.
Great. Throw me a tough pitch.
I am right out of the gate.
No, it's a great question. I mean, the obvious answer is to communicate and to communicate often. I think one suggestion I would make is, these development plans are evolving and shouldn't be static documents. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time and work in developing a plan, making it great, and then putting it on a shelf and never really re-examining it again. So I think in terms of alignment of communication and events, making sure all the trains are running on the right track at the right time and not crashing into one another, it's important for you to have minimally, I think, quarterly updates around your plan. So where you gather together your team and look at your plan and say, how are we doing against this? Have new things happened? I mean, let's be honest, all development plans for the calendar year 2020 went out the window, right? When COVID hit. We had to completely pivot, as the word of the day is. We really need to have that kind of flexibility to say, you know what, when we were putting this plan together several months ago, we thought we would be moving in this direction, but clearly that's not working. We need to change. And how do we need to do that? And so having these quarterly check-ins on your plan, I think, are really important. It also is a great way to assess how you're doing, particularly as you get into Q3 or Q4 of your fiscal year, whether that's calendar year or as most schools are, and some nonprofits kind of summer to summer. You need to track and say, how are we executing on this? Do we need to do something more to be able to hit our goal than we have been doing? So being able to make those mid-course corrections is extremely important. But I would say meet quarterly at least, maybe monthly would be better as a full team, to make sure that there's coordination and make sure that you're still doing the things that you said you were going to do in your plan. And if you need to make a change, be courageous enough to make that change so that a better result will come from it.
Thank you, Jeff. I agree with that very much. And one of the things that we're going to offer all of you folks is a resource that's a development plan template. And that development plan template, if you want to take it and sort of make it work for your organization, but the way it's laid out can also be a really strong tool for you to share across areas of your organization, so that you guys all stay on the same page as to what you're talking about, when you're sending such and such out, and all of the pieces in order. And to Jeff's point, if you are meeting regularly, assessing and evaluating and changing things as needed, but if you're sharing that document in real time, and there's, as you'll see on the template, there's a place for responsibility of who's responsible for what task and so forth, that can be a really strong tool for you to work across your organization. Some other questions we've received. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I was just going to add there too, Kim, that I always recommend once you create your development plan, whether it's simple or complex, share it with the people in your organization who are going to be involved in it, and share it with the board. Boards should know what's going on in the development shop, and they should be asking for reports. It provides some accountability and also lets the board know how they can help and support. So
great point, Jennifer. We've also received a question about what sort of plan do you recommend for a 2-person development team? So jumping from the idea of the mid and larger size teams, but to a smaller team, 2-person or even 1 person. We're engaged in all of these areas, but we feel like we're not able to give each one the special attention it deserves as we are spread thin. Holy cow, is that true? Right, when there's a small team, we've worked in small teams and with small teams, and it can be really difficult to try to manage and when you're spread thin. I'll just say real quick, and then I'll toss it to y'all, is that I think that there's nice to haves and then there's essentials. And so if you're working on a multi-channel, for example, if you're working on a multi-channel campaign for your annual giving campaign, and it'd be nice to have text to give, it'd be nice to have 3 videos, 1 for each week, all these things. Is it essential? Maybe, maybe not. I really am a strong believer in objective. What is the objective of the task that you have in front of you? And if you can do that task effectively with less bandwidth, or someone else in your team could do it, or there's some other way of making that happen that would release you to handle a higher priority item, I strongly encourage you to try that. So yeah, go ahead. Any other thoughts on that, guys?
I would again prioritize the 3 major activities and strategies that we outlined. So annual giving, major giving, and volunteer engagement. I think you're going to find the greatest ROI, at least in the short term, out of those 3 areas. Obviously, corporate and foundation funding and planned giving are going to be longer term important investments for you to make. But don't spend all of your time writing grant proposals. Spend more of your time engaging your very best donors, finding out why they're giving to your organization, what their passions are, and how to increase their commitment. You're going to find a much more valuable return on your time and investment in that kind of work than pursuing corporate and foundation funding, for example. And the planned gifts will come when the relationships that you've built with these donors in the first 3 areas, annual giving, major giving, and volunteer engagement, are done well. So I would really focus on those 3 activities. And then as you build capacity and have more bandwidth, bring on more staff as you grow, then you can venture into the other areas that we've described.
The last piece, jumping off of what you just said there, Jeff, the last piece I would mention about this is large scale events. Jennifer's mentioned the golf tournaments and the galas and so forth. And that's true of not just schools, but all kinds of nonprofits hold them. I would say across the team here, we would recommend that you try to find a way to diversify what you're doing so that you're reducing or hopefully potentially even eliminating the dependency on those huge events that take up so much of your bandwidth and your volunteer bandwidth. They're great to have, and I'm a fan of them for a lot of reasons, but if you're putting all of your eggs in that basket and something goes wrong with that basket, then you're kind of in trouble. So we really are big fans of diversifying and working with your major givers and so forth. So another question we've had just come in is, what is the best practice for maintaining a development calendar? Whiteboard, digital combination, project management software. And I think it could be, my response to that would be potentially all of the above. I think that I myself really like charts and calendaring and spreadsheets. And so that's the way I work and that's the way I communicate to my teams. But if, I also have a whiteboard in my office. And so that also is really helpful as well. So I think that it might depend on how your brain works and how you best communicate across other folks in your community. I know Jeff and Jennifer, you guys both have really good strategies for this. So if you want to chime in.
I'll answer. Like Kim, I love whiteboards to the point that my colleagues make fun of me. So I'm just going to give you a little peek here at my whiteboard. That's some work I did with a client this week. And I actually have a video camera here and we videoed the whiteboard session. I use whiteboards. It's the way my brain works. So I will do it for myself to get my brain straight. And then I will do it with a team. I'll do it again where we're putting everything up. So I'm a fan of whiteboards. And then I think all of us in our client work, if we're working with clients, we create a development plan that has assignments. It's really important to make specific assignments so people know who's responsible for what and put a date to it. If you don't put a date on it, it's not going to happen. And then if you're a large enough shop that you've got some project management software that you're using, anything will work. Slack, we use Teamwork, Microsoft Teams, whatever you have at your disposal. If you can put some deadlines in there and some task assignments, I think that's really helpful. And then, you as the one who created the plan can kind of go in and see where things are on track and where they're behind. So.
And I would just echo what was said earlier. It's amazing what you can get done when you have a deadline. So putting deadlines
Mhm.
to projects really helps you stay on course. I think one of the biggest dangers we face in development is the tyranny of the urgent. Trying to find time to do the intentional strategic thinking and planning that we need to do is often very difficult. So when I would be a development director of a team, chief development officer, when we came time to do annual strategic planning around our development work, developing a development plan, we would go off site. We'd do a kind of a intentional retreat for a day or sometimes 2 days, where we would try to eliminate as many distractions as possible and do this kind of planning, so that we could have something in place and then put it into our project management software that would then give us pings when things were due, so that we could know that we were pushing forward and advancing these projects. It's so important. Don't let the crisis of the moment derail you from the strategic initiatives that you've committed yourself to.
That's right. Thank you, Jeff.
Oh, good.
So yeah, and in short, I think the answer to the question is that there's really a lot of really great ways to manage your efforts, your plans, your times. But it comes down to a very personal answer as to what works best for you. If it's gonna the most effective thing, and it might be a little bit of trial and error, and that's totally fine. Just whatever works best for you is in fact the best method. So some of the other questions that we received, I'll just really mention very quickly, because one of the questions that we received earlier was, what is the best approach with high capacity donors and what strategies work with them? And so Jeff, you may want to touch base on that really quick, but I did want to mention that on August 25th, we are having another webinar specifically in this on that exact topic, which is engaging high capacity donors. So I'll just put a plug in for that August 25th. I highly recommend, if that's an area of growth or interest to you, that you register for that. But Jeff, if you had one tip that our folks could, for working with best or high capacity donors, what do you think?
Don't ignore that work. Schedule it just like you schedule anything else. Again, back to the tyranny of the urgent comment. If you don't have in your weekly schedule time blocked out to engage your best supporters, and either that's doing the thing that Jennifer suggested, just going outside and taking a photograph of the work that's being done because of their generosity and sending them a quick text, calling them on the phone, having coffee or lunch with them, cutting out an article or linking an article in an email, or cutting it out and putting it in the mail to them, something that they would be interested in and appreciate. If you're not doing that on a weekly basis and carving out time in your schedule each week, then you're not doing major gift fundraising. And that's really, really important to say, because you've got to prioritize it. If you do not prioritize it, then it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen necessarily organically. Sometimes it does, but if it does that way, then you're not doing it with intentionality, and you could do so much more. So carve that time out. As precious as your time is, it's probably your most valuable commodity, isn't it, as a development officer? That's going to be really important for you to prioritize and make it a strategic goal.
Thank you, Jeff. And so our last question we received prior was talking about, and I think this gets to the heart of messaging and reaching prospective donors with why, hopefully inspiring them to give, why they might want to give. And the question was specific to schools. If the folks are paying tuition, why would they want to make a gift? And I just wanted to say that I think this is true not just in K-12 or with parents or whatever, but I think that what it really gets down to is the heart of the giver, and trying to help them understand that, especially in the context of a Christian organization, a faith-based organization, that all resources are God's resources. And so I speaking on behalf of our team, I would say that one of the things that we really like for our folks when we're talking with our folks is to understand that we want all of God's people to have the opportunity to share in the wonderful act of making God's work possible and his kingdom possible through their giving. And so we want to get to the heart of that without all of our prospective donors. And so there's a messaging aspect there that you just need to sort of work through about the impact of a gift and why it's important that folks are being a part of God's work. And so messaging is an area that we work a lot on with Generis, especially about cultural generosity. So do you guys have anything you'd like to add to that?
I would just add a particular idea that I've used with clients that has worked well in that regard. And Kim is right on the money when she says messaging and engaging the heart of the giver. I will encourage groups, let's take school, for example. If you're trying to get your staff to give, then pick one of your staff people and have them write an email or a letter to the staff or share kind of their giving story to say, hey, I know we all work here, but I actually give as well. They don't have to tell how much they give. In fact, they shouldn't. But the reason I give is because I want to be a part of this work that God's doing in the world. Same thing, it can be really impactful for a parent to write a letter or give a testimonial that says, you know, we pay tuition and frankly, it's a stretch for our family, but we also always try to make a gift to the school, and here's why we do it. And again, not amounts, just the heart behind it. Really good way to engage those groups that might be reluctant. All right, well, we are getting ready to wrap up here. Thank you for all of your questions. Let me just say a couple things. These are the things we promised you'd walk away with at the beginning when you registered for this, and I hope that you have gotten these things. The essential elements, we gave you 5 of a strong development plan. Some guidance around how to set fundraising goals. Jeff talked about that. And then one next step for your organization to take. So whether you've never had a plan or you have a plan and you need to redo it, start simple. We are believers that a simple plan is better than no plan. And a simple plan is also better than a really complicated plan that nobody sees or understands or follows. So several of you have asked, and the answer is yes. We're going to follow up with a free template. We'll send that to you that you can use to kind of begin mapping out your development program. If you would like, we will do a complimentary call with you, a 30-minute call to review whatever you come up with. So you can reach out to us. Christy's going to tell you more about that. And if you've realized over the course of this hour, hey, I think we need some really specific help with major gifts or with getting our board to be better at giving or parent engagement, this is the work that we do to help clients really move forward with their goals. And we're available for all of that, including wealth screening and some of those things that might be difficult to tackle on your own. So Christy's going to tell you how you can reach us.
Well, thank you all. That was such a great session, an amazing way to kick off our series. So thank you, Kim, Jeff, and Jennifer for your time. And thank you to everyone who spent the hour with us. We're grateful to have you here. So like Jennifer mentioned, and I mentioned at the beginning, tomorrow you will receive a recording of this workshop. You'll receive a PDF of this slide deck, as well as those bonus resources that our team has crafted to serve you well. And I'm going to go ahead and say again, it's on my list here. If your school organization needs help developing a development plan or just need to talk to someone, these people are amazing and they'd love to be able to do that and be honored to partner with you. Be sure to register for the rest of our advancement workshop series. Our next workshop, Kim already gave a preview for, is high capacity donor engagement on Wednesday, August 25th. That is going to be led, it's a round table. It's going to be led by Carla Maxwell Ray, who is incredible. Jeff is going to pop back in for that one, as well as Mark Dillon. So that's going to be a great session. We have another one happening in September and October. And in the chat right now, I am dropping a bunch of links for everyone. So go ahead and copy that, paste it in your notes. A lot of this will also be in that follow-up email, but it's how to get started with our team, how to connect with Jeff, Jennifer, Kim, where to register for the rest of those workshops. And I went ahead and dropped in the link for the ebook, Understanding and Engaging Your Givers. As you guys were talking about that at the end, I was like, that is a great resource. And I know it covers like 4 different types of givers. So just some great bonus content for everyone. Thank you guys. This was great. And we look forward to the next one.